I rarely watch daytime TV, but over the past while I've found myself watching a few episodes of A Place in the Sun. Firstly, I'm putting it out there that presenting A Place in the Sun is my new lifetime ambition. We'll see how that pans out, and if any of the producers or directors of the show watch this video, well, you can give me a call. Secondly, and the reason this article came about is because on each and every advert break, there was an advert for equity release, and that was by a major insurance company. With my marketing hat on, what struck me about the advert was that it wasn't the homeowners in question discussing the benefits of equity release, but rather their adult children. Is this a sign of the times? Whatever the intent of the ad, it just felt weird and not wholly in the homeowner's best interests. To listen to the adverts, equity release is an easy way to free up some money or to make your retirement a more comfortable experience. But is it really? In my mind, the minute I hear equity release, I think scam.
Which one's the scammer?
Sirens go off and I urge people to run away. But that's primarily because the only previous knowledge that I have of equity release is the scandals that I read in the paper or the horror stories that I've seen online. However, I'll admit that I've never truly given thought to the advantages and disadvantages of equity release and whether or not they are actually a tool that people who are over 55 can use for their benefit. With that in mind, I wanted to learn more about it, and in this video I aim to objectively look at the myths, the truths,
you can't handle the truth,
the pros and the cons, and finally I look at the alternatives to equity release, including a very interesting French inspired alternative to the traditional home equity release, the viager system. If you know someone who is considering equity release, or this sounds like something you want to understand better, then please do watch on. Equity release is the name of a range of products exclusively available to those over 55. By taking equity release, you can free up the cash, also known as equity, in your own home property. The money can then be taken as a lump sum in smaller amounts over a period of time, or a combination of both. There are two types of equity release options in the UK. The first is the lifetime mortgage for those over 55, and the second is home reversion, available for those over 60. In both cases, you will own a lifetime lease that guarantees you the right to stay in your home until death or when you move into long-term care.
Okay.
Lifetime mortgages are the most common form of equity release in the UK and involve taking out a mortgage against some or all of the equity in your home. It is important to note that you will continue to be the owner of your home in this instance. Interest rate is fixed or capped, and you can choose to make the repayments monthly, or you can let the interest roll up or compound to be paid on the sale of the property.
Am I missing anything?
The total value of the loan and any interest owed is repaid when the last homeowner dies or moves into long-term care. When you choose a lifetime mortgage, compound interest is working against you. It can snowball quickly, and the longer you live, the greater the cost of the mortgage. If you want to find out more about compound interest, head over to foundred.co.uk, where I have a very in-depth article on the topic. With a home reversion equity release, you are selling part or all of the property to a third party. In return for this, you will receive a tax-free lump sum payment or smaller, more frequent payments. The provider will offer below market value in the region of about 50% of the current value for any percentage of the property that you sell. You can continue to live in the property until the last homeowner dies or moves into care, but there will be strict conditions around maintaining and insuring the property. When the property is sold after death, the home reversion provider will take their agreed percentage of the proceeds from the sale. Equity release. There are a number of equity release myths, that's hard to say, that I've come across in my research. Myths that ultimately feel like features touted by the providers, yet they are definitely questions that I know that I would ask, so I'm here to discuss them a little bit further. Do you have to take a lump sum? With the forms of equity release noted in this video, you can split the money you receive into smaller, more frequent amounts over just taking a singular lump sum. There are significant benefits to doing this as well, especially when you consider the savings on interest payments that you might get from delaying large parts of of the equity release. For example, if you release 50% of the equity in your property today, the interest will start right this second on the entire balance. However, if you took only 25% now and then 25% in 10 years, when you actually need that additional money, you would only get charged interest on the first lump sum over the first 10 years, and this could then therefore reduce the overall interest payments significantly. Do give consideration to when you might need the money, because that will have a significant factor on the amount of interest that you will pay. Can you still move house? All equity release plans approved by the Equity Release Council allow you to move whenever you like. The equity release plans do differ, as those with a lifetime mortgage can simply transfer the mortgage to their new home. Those with home reversion equity release plans will have sold a percentage of their property, and because of this, they may now not own enough equity in their current home to purchase a new property. So always check the terms and conditions and what plan you have. Do you still own your own home? A common misconception about equity release is that you will no longer own your own home. In the UK, lifetime mortgages are the most popular type of equity release plan, and with this type of contract, you will always remain the owner of your home until the last owner dies. One of the biggest fears of those looking at equity release as an option is that they will be forced from their home in their later years.
Tell your boss he can have our house when I'm dead.
You cannot be forced to move from your home, as you are the owner of that property until death. Will I be able to leave an inheritance? With both a lifetime mortgage and home reversion, you can ring fence a proportion of your property equity for inheritance. This percentage of the value of the home is completely outside of any equity release terms, and if you use a provider who has a no negative equity guarantee, that's incredibly important that you do, then those who inherit the remainder of your property won't be liable for any further or additional costs. The main benefit of equity release is that you're given access to the money to spend now. Rather than that equity being tied up in your property, you have the ability to use this money to fund your later years.
Oh my. Oh no, 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 no!
It isn't for everyone, but there are situations where it might be a valid option. For example, a single person with no one to leave their estate to may benefit from equity release. You don't get the full value of your house. The primary disadvantage of equity release is that you will never ever receive the full market value for your home. According to Money Helper, you will normally get between 20% and 60% of the market value of your home, or the part that you sell. If we put some figures to this in an example, let's assume that we get a 50% rate from the equity release provider. If your property is valued at £400,000 and you want to release 50% of that, or £200,000 worth, then instead of the equity release provider giving you the full value of £200,000, you may only get £100,000, and it could even be less than this. Equity release is an expensive option. There are significant legal costs associated with setting up equity release contracts, and the arrangement or valuation fees paid to the provider could be many hundreds or even thousands of pounds.
Now that pisses me off.
Generally speaking, these costs are not payable until your mortgage completes and the funds are released, but you definitely need to check the small print. Higher interest rates are normal. The interest rates in equity release lifetime mortgages are often higher than you would get for a normal mortgage. According to Moneyfacts, the average fixed rate in October 2022 was 7.55%. The interest rates are usually capped or fixed for the duration of the term, but as they are generally quite high to begin with, the interest paid compounds quickly, and it compounds against your estate. Compound interest is fantastic when you're saving and investing, but it is disastrous when you're borrowing, especially when you're borrowing over decades. Downsize your home. Anyone considering equity release, the safest and cheapest way of releasing equity in your home is to downsize. Over many decades, the equity in your property has likely grown considerably, and the number of people who are living in your four walls has likely decreased. Does your home meet your needs today or possible needs in the future? Well, maybe it does and maybe it doesn't, but I strongly urge you to consider downsizing your property, as this can have a huge impact on your life and, most importantly, your finances. Don't give any consideration to what the neighbours or your friends might say.
It's my sister, Violet, you remember? The one with the large house, the sauna and room for a pony.
Retirement interest only mortgages, or RIOs. During my research, another product caught my eye that might be a suitable option for some. It isn't necessarily a form of equity release, but retirement interest only mortgages, or RIOs, are similar to lifetime mortgages. You will receive a lump sum of cash secured against your property, but in return, you must make your monthly interest payments. For those with a stable income through pensions or other means, this can be a very effective way to release equity in your home. The key benefit of an RIO is that its cost is significantly cheaper than a lifetime mortgage. With an RIO, you pay off the interest each month, whereas in a lifetime mortgage, it grows and compounds against you during the lifetime of the term. When you die, the mortgage ends and the remaining loan is then paid from your estate or by the inheritors to clear the mortgage. I did mention a very interesting French alternative, and I'd like to now talk about a viager, a French alternative to equity release. A few years back, a homeowner in St Albans made headlines across the UK when he put his home on the market for over £250,000 less than the typical asking price in his area. The homeowner, 64-year-old Mr Peter Yielding, had one clause or condition on the sale. That was that he was allowed to continue living in the property rent-free until he chose to move out through death or he moved into long-term care. And while this made the headlines in the press and it caused a little bit of a stir here in the UK, for our French neighbours this is a common occurrence. So much so that they call it a viager arrangement. Oh la la. The main difference between the viager system and Mr Yielding's proposal is that he wished to receive the full sum of his property up front, whereas under the French system, the seller of the property would receive a regular and guaranteed income for the remainder of their life. This arrangement often favours the seller, as the buyer must wait a considerable period of time to release their equity, and the longer the seller lives, the greater their benefit is. With that in mind, both parties would need to be comfortable with that arrangement, but if approached openly, this can be a mutually beneficial arrangement for all parties, guaranteeing income and somebody making money on the other side. While there are fees associated with setting up a viager arrangement, you are essentially cutting out the middleman and their costs. In the UK, a contract for this type of arrangement can be drawn up by a solicitor relatively easily, though the main challenge that you as a seller might find is actually finding a buyer who will agree to your terms and conditions. But it can be done, and there are plenty of people out there looking for this type of arrangement. For many pensioners in the UK, a viager arrangement might actually be the perfect balance between releasing equity and retaining the ability to live in your own home. If you are considering equity release, then it is always a sound decision to speak to a qualified financial advisor about the options that would be available to you. They should give you honest and impartial advice based on your specific needs and requirements and your own unique situation. It is important to note, however, that many financial advisors do work with the companies that provide equity release and will receive a fee if you choose to arrange your plan through their services. This will always be documented and explained to you in advance, and the advice that your financial advisor should give you will come impartially and separately to any arrangement that you do make. If you enjoyed this video and got any benefit from it, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on any notifications so that you never miss another upload. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.